So I received a question about dealing with triggers in a relationship, and it can be a really difficult thing to teach, especially on video. But what I want to do is give a really broad perspective on this because it's something that every single one of us experience. Relationships and triggers in a relationship. This specific situation was where the woman who shared with me, she was triggered, and then her partner became frustrated at the trigger. She shared that this is a healthy relationship, but I think all of us can relate to the fact that either feeling frustrated when our partner is triggered, or having our partner be frustrated when we're triggered. This is something I think we all face. So I'm going to try and unpack it. And I think the first thing that's really important to note, that's easy to forget, even though it's might be obvious sometimes, is that there are three life forces in every single relationship. I'll use myself as an example. There's myself, there's my partner, and then there's the relationship. The best way I know to be able to navigate triggers, trauma, processing, healing, growth in relationships and evolution in a way in which it's never about, there's no confusion about whether or not one party may need support or not, or to go and get support or not, is to be really, really clear, both parties be really, really clear that there's my stuff, that there's their stuff, and that there's the relationship stuff. So the very first thing to identify in a situation where you're getting triggered is whose stuff is who. There's always usually a little bit playing out of both, but I think what gets really, what's misleading and often confused is that people often think it's the relationship, the problem of the relationship itself, not of the individual, or there will be the projection that it's the problem of the other person and there is no relationship life force even thought about. It's not even considered that the relationship itself has a life force. So the most effective way to overcome being able to deal with triggers in a really healthy way in a relationship is identifying, cool, we have a relationship life force. What's the purpose of this relationship? What are the values of the relationship? That foundation, when both of you are like, cool, I'm in this because, why? Because I want to grow and get to know you, because I'm looking for just some beautiful shared intimacy with someone, but right now exploring the dynamics of my sensuality or my sexual pleasure, or is it that I am in this so that I can, because I love you and I see a future with you? Is the purpose of the relationship growth for you both? What are your personal values, but what are your values of the relationship? As an example, I know Ryan and I, for our relationship, it's adventure, it's growth, it's love, support. So when anything is ever wobbly in the relationship, we're always checking in. Is it me that's wobbly? Is it you that's wobbly? Or is the relationship, are we outside of our values in the relationship? Because if our individual stuff, if our individual triggers are taking us out of alignment with the relationship value, and that's really easy to identify because you have the values of the relationship really clear. You have the purpose of the relationship really clear, both of you, and you've agreed on it. That's also sometimes a really difficult step for people. So begin there and do the hard thing. It's easy to be like, cool, I can see we're getting out of alignment here because my stuff's coming up. It's a very, very, very gentle, easy way to let the other person take extreme ownership without the other person being like, maybe you could go and get some support. Because the biggest struggle I find in relationships is one person might be working on themselves and the other person isn't. And there's this dynamic of feeling like, well, I don't need to do anything because I feel okay. But if you come back to the purpose of the relationship, well, is the relationship fulfilling this, this, and this? If it's not, even though I'm dealing with my stuff, I don't feel that, for me, this relationship doesn't feel safe. It doesn't feel like I'm able to be heard. I don't feel like I'm adventurous or growing. And if the other person, if the values of relationship are, say, growth and love and support, and this is what the other person is stating, and you trust your partner in that, then, and you have, I guess, taken an oath, or you have opted into the relationship as the other party, even if that other party doesn't feel like it's not their stuff, they could perhaps go and get some support to see where it might be playing out that let me give a little bit more context. If one party is resisting and getting support, and the other person is finding themselves triggered and getting support, but not feeling that the relationship itself can be healthy and whole because they're not being understood in their triggers, it is the responsibility in a way that you've committed to that relationship being safe and loving and growth, which is, I'm using these because most people, that's everyone's values in relationship, to look at that. And if that person requires more help and you feel triggered by their triggers, that is something to work on. If you feel confronted by them wanting to speak about the things that they need to speak about, then that's something to work on. And you can go and work on that for your own stuff, or you can do that together with one person. Other ways to deal with navigating triggers in a relationship is that, obviously, if you've never been triggered before and it happens the first time, the most effective way is the most obvious. It is to communicate, I'm feeling triggered right now, and what I need is this. It could be, I'm feeling really triggered, right? You could just say triggered, or I'm feeling really upset, or I'm feeling very hot, or I'm not sure what's going on with me, but I'm feeling contracted, I'm feeling angry. My mind or my ego is saying this and this and this. And it is up to the person who is triggered to do their very best to ask for what they need, which may include space. Yeah, I just need some space right now. Or right now, I would love it if you could just simply listen to me. Right now, I need a hug. If it's things like, I need a hug, or I need you to listen to me, or I need you to validate this, and the other party isn't in a space where they can give that, then the triggered party needs to respect that that other person isn't able to give it. Relationship dynamics, they are our biggest teachers. And so the thing that's the most important, A, is communication, but B, our ability to be objective about what we are feeling, our ability to be able to be present with our own experience, which requires both parties, not just together, but both parties, taking ownership and responsibility for practicing in their own world the ability to be objective with their feelings, to be objective with their mind, to have the capacity to be able to observe their thoughts, but most of all, expressing, this is what I'm feeling. You don't need to know the answer. You don't need to, it's not someone else's responsibility to fix it, but the very first step, and what I find is people don't often do, is they don't say what they're feeling. They're not communicating to their partner. They're closing down or they're withdrawing, and they're listening to what's going on here and they're responding to their emotions. If you can speak it, if you can let your partner know what's going on and ask for what it is that you need, that's the very first step. If they are triggered by that, that is something for them to just notice and be like, okay, I'm triggered by this. I'm triggered, thank you, that's my dog sneezing. I'm triggered by my partner asking to be either given space or to be held, or I am finding that I'm wanting to dismiss or solve or justify or minimize their feelings, which is really common when we're first in relationship and not wanting the other person to be upset, which is an indicator that we're not able to do that for ourselves. We're not able to sit with and feel deeply compassionate for our own triggers, our own feelings, and as a result, we feel perhaps we're taking responsibility, or a lot of us may feel that we're being blamed, and we may get on their immediate defense if our partner is sharing how they're feeling, which is something to look at in every single human being. It's that little narcissistic flavor within us all that doesn't want to take responsibility, that feels afraid of hearing their partner's feelings, and as a result, they may justify, minimize, they may dismiss, they may try and solve the problem, or get really frustrated by that. So I guess what I'm giving you is a picture of really common indicators that play out in triggers. Like one person gets triggered, they're not communicating how they're feeling, they're projecting their trigger onto their partner, they're not telling them what they need. So we need to take responsibility. This is what's happening, this is what I'm feeling, don't know how to fix it, but this is what's happening, this is what I need. Another common thing on the other end is that partner not being able to hear that, not listening to that, feeling like that's your stuff, you just go and deal with it. We're interdependent, which means that if you've chosen to be in a committed relationship with that person and it is outside of your values to ignore or dismiss that person needs something from you, then you need to take some ownership of that and go and get some support and being able to support this side, right? I feel like I have given like a really broad perspective. I guess my final thing to say around dealing with triggers in relationship is that if you're being triggered, get support. Yeah, like go and work with that trigger and work with someone who you know has the ability to be able to see the root cause of the problem, not just give you some things to help with the symptoms. They're able to take into account absolutely everything that's going on, especially from the past, and that just check in with yourself on your own values of what you want in a relationship. If your partner isn't on board with that, or if they're doubting that, or they're not into that, that's an indicator. There's something to look at. Maybe then going back to the basics of the foundations of the purpose and the values of the relationship. Is it that are you missing the fact that you're deeply accepting and willing to support each other in whatever you need? Like, have you even got a purpose or values clear in the relationship at all? Is that clarified? A lot of people don't. So maybe go back to the drawing board. Yes, these conversations can be difficult to have. Yes, if you've been together for 2, 10, 40 years, if you don't have this, you start small. You just begin with the conversation, because anything that is honest, anything that is true can be said and navigated when it's coming from your heart. Which brings me back full circle to my point that when it comes to working with your triggers in a relationship, the most important thing to do is that you're working on your ability to process, assimilate, and be with your own feelings. That's the most important, because when you're triggered, the thing that's the biggest problem is that we don't know what to do with it. We're projecting on it. We go back into old trauma patterns, and our partner isn't a therapist and they don't know how to deal with that. If we can have practices in our life, such as like coherent breathing, calm mind breathing, through the nose, into the belly, into the diaphragm, a practice where you're doing that 10 minutes a day, you're increasing your ability to stay in a coherent state. You have a place to come back to regulate your nervous system. You don't have to fix the emotion. You don't want the emotion to go away, but at least in that moment, you can see the emotion. You can detach without disassociating. You can be with it without bypassing. You can perhaps even feel and let it move through you, and then speak to what was going on. So your own practices in your own world are the most important thing that you can do when it comes to working with triggers in a relationship. If you have any other questions, because this is so broad, this is so deep, this is so multifaceted, this is so multi-layered, there are so many different dynamics playing out. But I feel like I want you to hear the most important thing is that because we're in a day and age where people are growing and there are so many catalysts going on with the movements of the world and how things are changing and how the world is that triggers are very common, and they're probably happening more now than ever, more common. So it's really important to learn what your partner's triggers are and be able to ask them what they need in those moments. Actually, I didn't make that point, but this is really good. Ask them what they need in those moments, but also know if you need to be in a space for yourself to be able to help them. So you can actually say no to your partner if they're asking you, I need you to do this for me. I need you to hug me right now. If you can't do that from a genuine place, that's okay. And you can say no. And if you're the person asking, you need to learn that your partner too is navigating their own inner world, and they may say no. Don't worry if this is difficult at first, because once you're aware, you can begin to navigate, you can begin to have conversations, which are the most healing. Because if you want depth and fulfillment in relationship, vulnerability. Speak. My inner critic's going off. Right now, my mind is saying this to me. Right now, this is what I am feeling. Speak. Be honest. Show. Don't project. Don't expect the other person to solve your problems. Do take ownership of what you are experiencing. Go and get support. Have values around your relationship. They're meant to be enjoyed. And also, I just want to note that I think there's a really distorted view of what is known as like soul connection or twin flame. And often what I have seen, and I've experienced this myself before, so this is firsthand, that toxicity in a relationship or mistreatment or misabuse or not taking responsibility or chaos in a relationship can be justified by the idea of having like a soulmate or by having a twin flame. relationship. If it's not healthy, it's not healthy. If it feels intoxicating, it's probably toxic. Indicators of feeling like you are addicted and so bonded with that person, feelings of like dependency or codependency, or on the other hand, inability to feel like completely safe and able in your own world to fulfill your own needs, may indicate that you're in a relationship that requires some deeper intimacy within yourself to be able to then go deeper into the relationship together. You can ask any questions you like at the bottom of this video. You're more than welcome to email us at hello@amberhawken.com. This topic is broad and it is beautiful and we can all relate to it. There are so many nuances, and please don't doubt yourself if you're like, oh my gosh, I'm confused about that, or this seems like a silly question. I'm open to conversation and discussion about this, but most of all, you asking more questions. Well done if you're navigating triggers in relationship. Go you, be compassionate on yourself, have compassion for your partner, and know that honesty, transparency, and your own practices are going to be the foundations alongside the values of your relationship and a purpose in your relationship.